In this video, we'll learn about component composition. So the composition is adding component within the body of another component. So in real time, we never build the whole application with a single component. The bigger application is a form of multiple small components, and we'll always try to build smallest component as possible. There are many benefits of small components, like it's easy to test, it's more reusable, it gives you the freedom for the writing the clear code, it's more readable, right? So there are many benefits of small components, so we always try to build a small component. So once your small components are ready, we'll integrate those component in the bigger component or the parent component, and that's why we build the bigger app. So compositions enable you to build complex components from a simple building block components. So now you have two components, you want to embed one child component into the parent component, you use this component composition. So there is a specific syntax by which you can embed your child component into the parent component, or I would say one component into the another component. So the syntax is, suppose your component name is child component. Here we gonna learn the naming convention, how you gonna embed. In previous video we have seen in LWC we use three types of naming convention: camel casing, Pascal casing, and kebab casing. So here we're gonna use the kebab case. So in kebab case we replace capital letter with small letter and prefix with hyphen. So if our component name is child component, it will convert into the C hyphen child hyphen component. C hyphen is very much important because this is the namespace in which you are using your component. So every time C hyphen will come and rest your component name will convert into the kebab case. So if you have two bigger letter like child component demo, so C and D is capital, here it will convert into child hyphen component hyphen demo. And if you have continuous capital letter like LWC, you have to hyphenate each and every letter and also convert each letter into the smaller case. So this is how we refer the component inside the parent component where you are embedding it. So let's go to our VS Code and try to understand this. So I'm in my VS Code. Now we're gonna build two components. So let's create the first component, and I'll give this name as hello parent component. Take the default path. So my first component is ready, and I'll give the second component. I'll create the second component. I'll give the name hello child component. So my second component is also ready. So we have two components, and we want the child component to be embedded in the parent component. So let's add some HTML in the parent component, and we'll add the standard template that we were using from previous video. So we'll create the card, we'll give the title, we'll say parent component, and within this we'll create a div and give the class slds margin around. So we are giving the margin around the card inside the content. Okay, and then we gonna say a simple text within this, hello from parent component. So I'll just copy paste the same code in the child component as well. So we are pasting in the HTML of the child component. I'll give the heading as child component. I'll say hello from child component. So the text in the child component is hello from child component, in parent is hello from parent component. So what I want is, I want to embed this child component inside the parent component. And to do that, we need to remember the naming convention that we saw in the slides. So it is in the C namespace. Then we need to call our component names hello, and the capital letter will be converted into lowercase and prefix with hyphen. So hyphen child hyphen component. And this is how you embed your child component or a component into another component. So in our case, whichever the component you are embedding, that is a child component, and where you are embedding, that is a parent component. So now our both components are ready. We interlink each other now. Now we need to deploy our component, and as we already embedding the child component into the parent component, we don't need to change anything in the meta file because we are not exporting the child component or exposing the child component directly to Salesforce. It automatically pulled out by the parent component, and we are exposing only the parent component. So let's change the is exposed property of parent to true so that it should be visible in the builder, and we'll set the targets. And in the targets we have only one page right now. We'll say the page name is lightning app page, and let's deploy this component within same command that we are using, sfdx4 source push. So once your component is deployed, now we need to embed this component into the page. Let's go to gear icon and click on edit page, and on the left hand side you can see if you want to search, you can search it as well, hello parent component, and drag your component onto the right side column and save this. And let's go back, and now on the screen you can see our card is ready. Card heading is parent component and the text is hello from parent component, and this text is coming from the child component, that is heading is child component, and the text is hello from child component. So we easily able to embed the child component into the parent, or I can say we are able to compose the components. And this is very important in real-time application. We compose many components inside different components. So that's it for this video. In the next video we'll learn about Shadow DOM. So I'll see you there. In this video we'll talk about Shadow DOM. So to understand the Shadow DOM, first we need to understand the DOM. So DOM is a programming API for HTML and XML document. It defines the logical structure of document and the way a document is accessed and manipulated. In simple term, if I have to say, the DOM is a tree structure representation of the web page, and DOM stands for Document Object Model. So when we write a plain HTML, or our HTML look like this, but when it renders on the browser creates an HTML tree, or the tree of the elements like document, then the HTML tag, then head and the body. Under the head, if he has a title, then the title element will come, then the text will come. Similarly, under the body, the h1 will come, the element a will come. If it has some text, the text nodes will come, the href tags will come. So basically, the web page representation in the tree structure or the element structure is a DOM. And when we want to embed one component to another component, we are trying to embed a shadow DOM inside the DOM. Okay, and if I have to say what is Shadow DOM brings the encapsulation concept to the HTML, which enables you to link a hidden separated DOM to an element. So Shadow DOM is a DOM inside a DOM. Okay, and there are many benefits of Shadow DOM. So Shadow DOM will not allow you to query the DOM element from parent. Suppose light DOM is your parent element, like in the previous video we created hello parent component and the hello child component. You can consider the light DOM as a parent component and the shadow DOM as a child component. So if I want to access any element of the child from parent, because of shadow DOM I can't access that directly. I can't allow my event to flow from child to parent automatically. There are the ways to achieve that, but by default it will not work because of the shadow boundary or the shadow DOM. And the other beautiful part is it will not override each other's CSS. Like if I have a tag in the parent component div and I am giving color blue, and the same div is inside the shadow DOM, it will not apply the color to the shadow DOM elements. So it will not cross each other's boundary, and that boundary we called it as a shadow boundary. So this is what I have written, like DOM queries event propagation and CSS rule cannot go to each other side of the shadow boundary, and thus it creates the encapsulation. And this is the core fundamental, one of the core fundamental of LWC. So let's go and first try to understand with the HTML and JavaScript point of view. Then I will tell you how it relates to our LWC. So I'm in my editor as well as in browser it's running. So if you already seen my HTML section or HTML video, you know how to create a basic HTML page. And in this I have a HTML tag, head tag, title tag, and the body tag. This is the default tags you create while creating a HTML page. And now to understand the shadow DOM, let's create some tags. So I'll create a div tag and I'll create a p tag. In this I'll say thanks for choosing 0 to hero course. And now on the screen you can see the tag is immediately printing the text. And if I have to give in this particular example what is DOM, so if you right click on the page, go to inspect, and whatever you see inside the element tag or element window, it's your DOM. This is the document object model. This is in the tree structure for web page, and if you want to more visualize it, go to the console and type document, and here it is your DOM tree. So it has HTML tag, it has style tag, head tag, body tag. These links are coming from my extension, so you can ignore it. And within the body tag I have my div tag. Thanks for choosing 0 to hero course. So this is document object model. Now we need to understand how to create a shadow DOM and how we can attach it. Okay, so let's go to our VS Code back. So I'll create first a div and I'll give this div an ID host. Okay, and now within the body tag I'll not create any extra JavaScript file. So to run the JavaScript inside the HTML you need a script tag, and in this I'll say const element equal to document dot query selectors. So this query selector is used to fetch an element from the HTML and using the selector. So in my case selector is the ID host, so it will fetch this element and store in the element variable lm. And now I want to attach a shadow DOM to my element. So to do that I'll say element dot shadow attach shadow. These all are the methods of JavaScript, and in this I can say mode equal to open. That will allow me to pass the data from child to from parent to child. And now what I'll say I'll store this into a variable const shadow root. So now we attach the shadow DOM to an element and we are saying okay, we store that in the shadow root. And now what we want to do is we'll create an element and attach that element to our shadow root. Okay, and we can say that shadow root dot inner HTML. So this is the way how we can attach the HTML. And I'll take p tag and I'll say I am shadow DOM, and this p tag should render on the screen now. So now you see I'm shadow DOM. It's coming from the shadow root, and this is the from the main DOM. Actually it's not from the shadow DOM. So now let's go to our element tag and see how it looks like. So I'll click on this, it will help me to select the element. So this is my DOM. Here it's under the body directly. Then there is another div that is a host, and if I open it here, now you can see it says there is a shadow root. It's coming from the shadow DOM, and what it is coming, it's coming as I am a shadow DOM. So this is how you create the shadow DOM or shadow root and attach the shadow elements to the another parent element. If you don't see this particular thing, you need to maybe enable it. Go to the settings. Under the settings you may see a property under the elements heading, show user agent shadow DOM. So if you enable this, then only you're able to see that. So this is how Shadow DOM works. Now, as we discussed in the slide, like with the Shadow DOM, CSS will not cross the boundary. Now, if you see, here is a p tag and here is a p tag. If I apply a CSS to p tag, it should ideally, if it was not a Shadow DOM, it will apply the color to the both tags. But because it is under the Shadow DOM, the CSS will not cross the boundary, that is shadow boundary. So let's create a style tag. So if you want to use the embedded style without creating a separate CSS file, you can use a style tag, and I'll say to the p element, give color red. Now you see it's only updating the color of the element that is in the DOM, not in the shadow DOM. So shadow DOMs restrict the passing of colors, passing of event propagation, as well as elements, right? So let's go to once again our slide, and we'll see it stop the DOM queries, event propagation, and CSS rules. So let's see an example of DOM queries as well quickly. So let me create a button here, and below the host I'll create a button, click me, and on this I'll say on click of this button, fetch p tag is my method name, and here I'll create a function fetch p tag, and I'll say let tags equal to document dot query selectors all, because I want all the p tags in the element. So now if I print the tags, let's see what it gives us. Now I have a button. On click of this button, I am calling the fetch p tags, and it should ideally fetch both the p tag, but we have studied if any content is inside the shadow DOM, you can't access that DOM queries, right? So using DOM queries. So let's go and click this button now. It returns only one p tag, and if I expand this and if I hover this p tag, it will show you which p tag it's fetching. That is, thanks for choosing the Zero to Hero course, and that is the DOM in which you are writing your main code, not the shadow DOM. So that's the benefit of shadow DOM. You can't cross the boundary, and this concept we're going to use when we're going to talk about our parent to child relationship. So in the parent DOM, you can access anything, but in the child DOM, that is a child component, you can't access their CSS or their property by default in the parent DOM. So if we talk about the previous example in which we learned about the component composition, so this was our previous video example, the parent to child composition. So basically the parent component is the main DOM in this case, and the child component is the shadow DOM. So whenever we apply some CSS on the parent, it will not apply to the child. And if I want to access the element of the child, I can't access the child directly. There are the ways that we'll discuss in the upcoming videos, but you can't fetch this element from the parent directly because of the shadow DOM. So this is the underlying concept. You don't need to go into the deep, but you should know why you are not able to fetch or why you're not able to apply the CSS. So shadow DOM is the concept behind the scene that is running. And in the exam or in the interview, this concept is most commonly asked, what is shadow DOM and how it's working in the LWC. So that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next video. In this video, we learn accessing elements in the component. So till now, we have seen how to pass the data within the component from JavaScript to our HTML. And then we saw to pass the data from HTML to JavaScript using the on-click handler and all. So now we'll see how we can access the elements in the component. So to access the component or access the element rendered by the component, we use the template property. So as you know, in our JavaScript section, we learned about query selector and query selector all APIs of document. And that time I told you guys like we in LWC it gonna be the same behavior except the way we gonna access it. So here whenever you want to run or you want to fetch any element from the HTML, we use this dot template dot query selector. So this dot template is point out to the current component, not to the all components or to the whole page. So this dot template points, okay, I'm in this particular component and I can fetch only these elements that are related to this particular component. So that's why we use this dot template. Then we use query selector, and query selector when you want to access only single element. And if there are many elements, suppose your selector is the tag name like h1 and you are querying using the query selector and there are multiple h1, so it will pick up the first one that comes from top to bottom. Similarly, if you want to fetch all the selectors, like all the element that match the selector, then we'll use query selector all, and it always returns the nodes, array of nodes. But that is not exactly an array, but the nodes of array. And we can use element.template type as well. Instead of this dot template, you can fetch the first element and then run your template query selector all on the template. We'll see all this example in a minute. And during the CSS also, or during the JavaScript section also, I explained you like what all are the selectors. Most commonly in LWC we use either a tag name or the element name or the class name. Will not go with the ID and will not use IDs selector with the query selector or query selector all. I'll come back to this point later. Let's go to our VS Code and start playing with query selector. So I'm going to create a new component, man palette, active web component. I'll say hello query selector demo, the default path. Now my component is ready. First, let me make this component exposable. So I'll just replace it with the is exposed to true and target is a lightning app page. So this component should be available in the lightning app page. So we'll come to the main part. So here I'll first create a h1 tag and I'll say, hey, I'm a heading. And below this I'll create a button. I'll go with the HTML plain button. You can create the lightning button as well. Fetch details. And I'll say on click call fetch detail handler, and this will create a method in the JavaScript or the class, and here we'll write our logic. So right now what I have done is I have created a text, I have created a button, and on click of that button I want to run something here in the code so that automatically I'm able to fetch this element text. To be specific, I want to fetch this text that is under the h1 tag, and to do that here comes our query selector, because right now I'm fetching only one element at a time. Okay, so I'll say this dot template. So it means just look into your template only, not to the other component template. So it looks into this template tags only, and then we'll say we want to run the query on the selector, and our selector is h1 tag. So I said go and bring the h1 tag. You can store this into an variable or you can run your things directly as well. So let's store this into a variable, and then in the console I'll print element dot, I want to fetch the inner text. I'll say inner text. So now if I deploy this component, then on the click of the button it should give me the inner text of this tag. To make this component little bit better, I'll quickly create the lightning card. I'll give the title query selector, and within this we'll create a div with a class that will give us the margin around. and let's paste this code inside the card. So let's deploy this component with the same command sftx force source push. Once component deployed, let's go and edit the page of our app 0 to heroine LWC. We'll quickly go and look into our component name, that is hello query selector demo. I'll place it on the right side column and save it. We'll go back, and now this is our card. I'll do the right click, select inspect element. This is the console where it prints the data. This is the way how we see whether the things are working fine or not. So if I click on the fetch detail, it will call the h1 tag. It will use the query selector method, and it brings the inner text if everything runs fine. So now I click the fetch detail. Now you see here it's printing, hey, I am a heading. So this is how query selector works. Now let's go and see how your query selector all works. So I'm back in VS Code. Now we'll quickly create a property called usernames, and I'll initialize it as an array of names. So I'll call it as John, I'll call it as Smith, I'll call it as Nick, I'll call it as Mike. So 4 names are good with us. Now I'm gonna use the loop here. So I'll say if it is a loop, I'm gonna use the template tag, and loop is the for each loop. In for each loop, you already know now, it takes on which property of array you want to run the loop. So I want to run the loop on the usernames. And what is the each item? So for item, each item, I'll call it as user, and here in between I'll say a div tag just as a wrapper, or I can ignore this as well. So I can directly say I'll use div only, and I'll give a class of name, and here I'll print all the username in the div, so it will start looping it. And we need the key property, that is very much important here. So let's add the key property, and key can be anything, but it should be always a unique, and it should be string or a number. So our users names are anyhow it's unique, so I'll keep key as a user. I have given the class name explicitly because I want to fetch the elements that has a unique selector. So I'm adding explicitly a class name so that I can able to differentiate from this particular template which element I want to fetch. I'll show you in a minute. So now I'll go on to the same function, that button is fetch detail handler, and this time I want to fetch all the elements that are printing inside the loop. To do that, what I'm gonna do is I'll say const user elements equal to this dot query selector all. Right now I'm using the query selector all because there are many elements, not a single element, because once the loop runs there are 3 divs or 4 divs will form based on the number of users. So I'll say okay, query selector all, fetch all the element that has a class name. So I'm giving a class name here, so it will fetch all the elements that has a class name. And what I'm gonna do here is I'll take this elements. This element is a node. Actually, in many tutorials, in many blogs, I have seen people run the loop directly on it. It's not exactly an array, so always convert whatever the value is coming into an array using array.from. So we are converting our user elements, that is a node of elements, to an proper array, and then we are running our for each loop, and we'll say each element will come as an item. Here I'm using an arrow function, you can use a normal function as well, and then we'll print each item is nothing, it's a each div actually. User list an array of divs and item is the each div. So in each div I can fetch inner text. So now if I click on the button, it will query the all the divs and all the names it will loop and print in the console. So let's deploy this and see how our query selector all works. And before checking, I forgot to add this dot template here. So make sure it's a this dot template dot query selector. Let's deploy this again and see in the output. So I refresh the page. Our console is empty. Let's click the button. So it should fetch first, hey, I am a heading that is coming through the query selector, and then it should fetch all the names one by one because we are running the query selector all, and that will fetching all the div elements with the class name, and then we are printing those in the console. So if I hit now fetch button, fetch details, now you can see in the console it's printing John, Smith, Nike, Mike. Here I am heading. Apart from fetching the text or the inner text, there are many things you can play around with it. It's not always recommend to use the query selector because ideally you are playing with the DOM, and playing with the DOM is always a costlier operation. But in some use cases you need it, like sometime in real, if I talk about a real-time use case in one of my project, I have used like from backend I was getting the HTML tags, so I need to render those HTML tags dynamically on the screen, right? In that case we have to use the query selector, right? And sometimes we have to run the styling dynamically, that time also we have to use the query selector. Let's go and see the styling demo first. So let's add some style to our h1 tag, that is this hey I'm heading. To do it using the query selector, I'll do one thing first. I'll take this console to the top so that we can keep our same code together. So this code is relevant to query selector all, and this code is relevant to our query selector. So I want to run an styling on this particular element. So within the element, when we fetch the element gives us so many properties. So one of the property that you can use is dot style, and what kind of style you want to add. So suppose I want to give the border, you can give the color as well, that's the simplest one. So if I want to give the style of border, I can give the style name, I want 1 pixel solid red, and once we hit the button, it will fetch the element, it apply the style, and immediately on the HTML we'll see the style. So let's deploy this and see the styling is working or not. So I'm covering the different use cases that you can use with the this.template.query selector. So I'm back to my page. Now if I click on fetch details, it should bring the border to the here I'm heading text. I clicked and now you see it immediately brings the border. So this is how you can apply the dynamic styling as well. We'll talk about styling more in the upcoming videos. So next I want to show you how we can append the attributes dynamically. Sometimes we want to append the attributes. Right now I'm hovering on the John, Smith or Nick or Mike, nothing is happening. Let's add a title tag dynamically to this. And to do that, let's go to our VS Code. Now what I want is, I want to append the title tag so that my div should look like this, title and user. You can do it from here, it's simple. And this title tag is very important from accessibility point of view. Sometimes you need to run it explicitly from JavaScript. So, but here in this use case, it's simple, but let's see how we can apply it using JavaScript. So to do that, each item, as I said, is an individual div. And to apply that, I'll say item dot set attribute. So set attribute take two property. First is the tag or the attribute name. So I want the attribute name to be title. And second is the value that you want to assign. So I want to assign the text only. So if I hover over the John pop-up, small pop-up should come with the John like that. So let's deploy this and see. So I deployed the component, I refresh the page. And now if I click on fetch details, Right now, before clicking it, I'll show you. Go to this icon. This is to select a specific element. So click this icon and hover over the text John. It will show how it's rendered. Right now in the DOM, it's not taking any title tag right now, right? It's taking only the class name, and the names of the user. So let's click the fetch detail button and see how things gets added. Now you immediately see it immediately brings the title tag with the names. This is how you set the attribute dynamically. And now if I hover over the text, there will be a pop-up somewhere on the screen. So you can see here the John is coming somewhere here. I'll hover it here again. See, similarly your Smith is coming, similarly your Nick is coming, similarly this Mike is coming. So this title tag is very important from accessibility point of view, and you can attach any attribute, whether you want to attach a URL dynamically, you want to attach a image dynamically, you can use the set attribute using the query selector. Okay, so now let's go to our slides and see the second topic of this video, that is LWC colon DOM equal to manual. So this directive we commonly use when we want to attach some element within the tags dynamically. Like if I give you a real-time example, when we works on the charts and charting library and we want to append the chart within that element, so we use this particular directive. So add this directive to a native HTML element to attach an element as a child. So let's go to our VS Code and see how we can use this. So I'll create another div here. I'll call it as, I'll give a class child. Okay, right now this tag is empty. I'm doing nothing. On click of button, what I'm gonna do is comment something LWC colon manual demo. Below this, I'll write the code. So first what I'll do, I'll fetch this element, and to do that I can say const child element equal to this dot query selector. I want only query selector because I'm using only one, fetching only one child. So that is my child class. And once the element is available, I'll try to do is child element dot inner HTML. Inner HTML is a way how you apply the, or how you append the child within the tags. So what you can append is, suppose you want to build something like this. P tag, hey, I am a child within this tag. So to do it programmatically, what you can do is you take out this tag and say inner HTML. Whatever you assign to the inner HTML, it will replace anything if it's already exist and place that tag that you are assigning to inner HTML, and it should be in the string format. And I'm saying, hey, I'm a child element. So now if you click, it should append, but usually it throw a warning so that you use this particular directive. It may be, I guess, from the performance point of view for Lightning Web Components. So it says you should use this directive in your tag when your tag is empty and you are planning to append something within the tags. Let's go and add the tag, and our tag is LWC colon DOM is manual. So indirectly you are saying to the LWC, I am going to do the manual DOM operation. So LWC column is saying, okay, I am the LWC application. On the DOM, I am performing the manual operation. I'll remove the spaces in between, and I'll come back and I'll say, I'll just change this name to the exact directive name, and child element dot inner HTML append this. So let's deploy and see how it works. And before deploying, again I forgot to add this dot template. I'm used to document dot query selected, that's why I always forget this dot template. So let's deploy this again and see the output. So I have deployed the code, I have refreshed the page, and right now you are not able to see the tag that is hi, I am a child element. So now I again hit this button, it should add that element dynamically. So I hit this. Now you see, hey, I am a child element. So this is how you render the child dynamically using LWC DOM manual directive. And this is how you play around with query selector. You can perform many things, like you can add and remove the attributes, you can add the classes, you can add the styling, but it's always recommend to use very less. You try to achieve the things using the getters or using the fields. That's more performance efficient. So that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next video.